Hello and welcome back again to another Bradcast. I'm Brad with Dependable Appliance. Give me a call if you need service at 757-812-1876. And of course, I always encourage you to visit my Facebook page or my website, bradsdependableappliance.com, or the Facebook page, Brad's Dependable Appliance at Facebook. Anyway, this is a second in a series that I've been trying to address some customer questions about replacing their appliances in the 2020s. It's a very different world than it was when I first started in this business 40 years ago. If you saw the preceding video, it's a general overview about my take on going to the store and buying any kind of new major appliance, whether it's generically a refrigerator, a washing machine, a dryer, what have you. Any major appliance, some things that I've observed that might help in making a selection. As stated in the previous video, it's more difficult than ever before, and it really comes down to not necessarily being able to pick a winner as far as the way we used to decades ago. We looked for a product that was well priced, it was a good bargain, it did the job that we bought it for. If it's a refrigerator, it kept food cold. If it was a washing machine, it cleaned clothes, a dryer dried them, and so on. And we wanted it to do it for a certain amount of time. That's what we would have considered a satisfactory purchase, a machine that lasted, in our impression, to the point where we could make the statement at the end of it, when it finally gave up its ghost, that machine doesn't owe me anything. It's done a good job for X number of years. Well, we can't really work with those standards anymore. The machines are not made that way. And I don't want to take up an entire 15 minutes of your time at this point going into details about changes in the economy and American family life and all, but that is a factor in all of this. The industry is making product that you will buy, that I will buy. And that's really not the same product. I mean, on the one hand, we want our cake and eat it too. We don't want to spend any more than we absolutely have to. And we've got sometimes, especially if you're my age or older, fixed prices in our minds of what the appliances used to cost years ago. But all of us are pretty much well aware that we couldn't go to a car dealer and buy a car for what we did in the 60s, 70s, 80s even, compared to now. I remember new cars, even in the 80s, in comparison with the appliance business time frame of 40 years ago, where you could buy a brand new car, a brand new General Motors car, for example, at the dealer for $12,000. A $17,000 Chrysler, I want to say it was the Chrysler Imperial, back around that time. To me, the body shape kind of reminded me of the silhouette of the Cadillac Seville with the sloping roof and trunk line. $17,000, and that sounded like an outrageous figure. Well, what new car can you get for $17,000 today? Is it some top-of-the-line, extravagantly deluxe automobile? I don't think so. So on the same token, we can't really expect to get the same product for the kind of prices that we have in mind. And the thing about it is, a car, at least, for a lot of people, a car, it's more than just a car. It reflects our personality. We picked something that we like the style of it, or it made us comfortable when we drove it, or it was particularly nimble in handling. Anyway, cars had a tendency to kind of reflect our personality, and other people, it's just a piece of transportation. We don't really care as long as it starts and it reliably gets us where we're going. We don't really care what it looks like, what the shape of the headlights are like, or even what color it is doesn't matter to me. I just want something that when I put the key in it and turn it, it starts up and gets me where I'm going. Well, for the most part, appliances are a lot like that too. And I have met some customers that went the extra mile, and they got appliances that the manufacturers made to appeal to them. I've seen washing machines in recent years come out in automotive colors. I think Whirlpool had one they called Sage. There were some different shades of silver, and then of course you had the Sage was a sort of a really light green sage color, like the seasoning or like the plant. I've seen washing machines in metallic finishes. General Electric offered one in a beautiful candy apple red. I've seen metallic sky blue. I've seen green, and several different manufacturers. I think possibly Samsung may also have had some that were in these eye-catching colors. reminds me of a neighbor I had when I lived in Germany, and she had spent, I want to say about 30 grand redoing her kitchen and bathroom fixtures. Not structurally, but she put a new tub in, and new floor tile and wall tile, and sink and a toilet. And then in the kitchen, she put new appliances, new countertops, all that sort of thing, a new floor in. She had about 30 grand invested in all this. And she would literally invite you in off the street to show you her kitchen and her bathroom if she knew you. Now, obviously, she didn't hang out at the window and watch people go by on the sidewalk and say, hey, you, I don't know your name, come inside my house and look at my kitchen. But she took great pride in it. You know, to a degree, many of my customers, if I look at the architecture, the effort that went into laying out the kitchen, the planning, the selection of the appliances, then yes, there's a measure of pride in there. But for the most part, the appliances, especially the laundry room, it needs to do what it was made to do. We're not necessarily inviting people in, oh, you've got to see my new washing machine. It's candy apple red. It's something that appeals to us if we go in and we look at it and go, boy, I really like that color. You know, it's so cool. It looks like a new car. Man, that thing looks snazzy. That was worth the money I spent on it. Personal preference thing. But in any case, they're utilitarian pieces of machinery that, you know, most of us are not going to collect one. It's not going to gain appreciate in value like a vintage automobile or something like that. So, okay. But back to this, we're talking about selecting replacements. The appliance that we have, major appliance, has died. Now, in this case, we're going to talk a little bit about washing machines. And I've had people, you know, apply the old maxim, they don't make them like they used to, especially to washing machines. And it raises a lot of questions. Why can't I get a simple basic, I just want a basic washer. I want to put my clothes in. I want to pour the detergent inside around the barrel. Maybe put some fabric softener in a dispenser somewhere, put the lid down, turn the dial, pull the knob out, and walk away. And come back in 35, 40 minutes and the laundry's done. A big part of that is government. Government said through the EPA several years ago, going back a decade ago, American appliances use too much water. And if anybody's followed the news and heard about what was going on Lake Mead and Colorado River and water shortages here in this country, and really there's been droughts and shortages recently almost globally. China reported that their water levels were down. In Europe, some of the major rivers like the Rhine, for example, have sunk to all-time lows, and it's exposing things just like at Lake Mead that nobody could see before because it was underwater. The government said we needed to cut back. Now, obviously, all the cutbacks, these appliances and the flush toilets with the lower water consumption, all that have been around for more than a decade, and it still wasn't going to be enough to affect diminishing water consumption to save the situation with the drought. But that was, the thinking was there, you know, we've got to do something proactively. So they required all the manufacturers that sold major appliances in the United States to make machines that met new water conservation measures, dramatic ones. If you've got a washing machine at home that loads from the top down and it has a lid that can stay open when it fills, only some of the newer models will do that. Or you have a glass lid, or you've paused your machine and taken a look inside of it, you probably noticed there's no water in this thing. I mean, there's just enough water on there if you've got a half a tub or a quarter of a tub of clothes in there to where you can tell the clothes are wet. In the old days, the machines used to fill water potentially to the top, and you had a water level control where you could adjust that if you were doing just a few things. You didn't want to use a whole tub full of water, especially on a hot or a warm wash. You could dial it back some. We used to get calls from people who'd gotten a new washing machine, they just started using it, and when they washed dark fabrics, they would potentially select too low a water level, and the detergent wouldn't quite rinse off the clothes, and little bits of fabric from the previous load would make little pills of white or white sort of streaky residue on the dark fabrics. Washing machine's got a defect in it. You need to figure out what's wrong with it and fix it. It's not a defect in the washing machine, once we determine that the machine is capable of filling to its maximum level, we just instruct the customer that in order for this washer to properly circulate and clean and rinse the clothes, we need something called hydraulic suspension. In other words, if you really look at an older washing machine, the type that used to fill up to the top and had an agitator in it, when the agitator moved, as long as you didn't overload the machine, the deal was the agitator doesn't just swish the clothes around, it causes turbulence in the water and the fabric goes with it. So you wanted effectively enough water to allow the clothes to move freely. It would use the water as a way of allowing the clothes to keep moving around the outside of the barrel, back down the center of the agitator, and then back up the sides again and back down. Well, when they implemented all these water conservation measures, the machines only fill enough in most cases to put a layer of water about a quarter of the way up the tub. And if you pack it full of clothes all the way to the top, it does measure the weight of the clothes. Some of the machines I work on, for example, they'll spin the barrel before the water even comes in. And it gets feedback from the electronically controlled motor through the electronic control board and then determines how much water that should be. And it sets the water level sensor automatically according to the estimated amount of clothes that are in it. In any case, you end up with a lot of wet fabric and you do not float out the clothes in the water. There is no hydraulic suspension. This is another reason why you find electronics on these machines. That's why you don't just have a timer dial anymore where you turn it to the beginning of the cycle you want, pull the knob out, and it clocks its way down. And when it's done, if you want to use that cycle again, you got to push the knob all the way in, turn it all the way back around to that cycle, and start it over. New machines, if they've got a dial on them, it's a selector switch. When you rotate it, you feel definite bumps or clicks as you turn, and you select a specific cycle. Typically, in my experience, the machines I work on, the shortest cycle is about an hour. Whereas you used to be able to get a load of clothes done, a full family-sized basket full of clothes, done in about 35 minutes from the time you started it to the end of the final rinse cycle. And it seemed to get our clothes clean for the most part. There were a few exceptions, a couple of designs in there that just didn't have a rigorous enough action or were prone to being overcrowded in the tub for what the washer could do at much smaller levels, smaller loads. But overall, they did clean clothes. Used, according to a government, EPA and all of that, too much water. So the computer in there has to create additional little functions in order to get the machine to properly work over all the laundry. In some cases, there's a second pump in the machine, not just one that's electrically driven to get the water out of the machine and down the drain when you're done, but another one that comes on in many models that sucks the water off the bottom of the tub and then diffuses it back over the clothes around the top. And that's going to help, circulate the detergent and the water and so on. And there are timed portions of the wash cycle where it might only fill a portion of the water so that a more concentrated detergent and water mix gets a chance to be worked through the clothes. But for the most part, the ones that do not have an agitator and do not fill it to the top, not everybody complains, but I do have a number of family type wash laundry applications where customers have told me consistently, people who don't know each other, that if they put the full load in the barrel up to the maximum line of the holes in the tub, not overfilled, and put the detergent and whatever in the dispensers and fire the thing up, that it never really seems to get the stuff that was initially on the top circulated through the tub enough to where everything comes out clean. They found out in order to get the level of cleaning that they used to get with the old machine, they literally have to split the load in half, and they do half loads. And the loads are an hour each. So what used to take 35 minutes to do a laundry basket full of clothes, for them, according to the feedback I'm getting from people who are using the machines, they end up potentially having to do 2 loads at an hour each, which is 2 hours versus 35 minutes. I can see where that would be frustrating. Now that's on the con side of getting a top loading machine.